Okay, so I am going to see Across the Spider-Verse tonight, and I think it would be absolutely disrespectful and sacrilege to not talk about the first Into the Spider-Verse movie because I have not reviewed that on this channel. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to get this video out of the way. I'm so excited, but before I get into that sequel, let's talk about this first movie and how great it actually is. This is going to actually contain spoilers. I'm not going to talk about every little detail in this movie, but I do want to go into specifics and moments that I really love and that do hit me. This movie is 4 years old, or 5 now. 5? 4? Wow, that is insane. Time flies. To give a little bit of context, Spider-Man has always been my favorite superhero. He was the first hero I was introduced to as a kid. Him and Batman are my two main, favorite heroes in any comics. And what I love about Spider-Man is how relatable he is, how grounded he is. You've heard it before. He's a person before a hero. Because he's a person that has normal daily consequences in life, it's really easy to relate to him, and the moments where he steps up to be greater and be a hero are all the more endeared because of it, and that's what I love about Peter Parker, and that's also what I love about Miles Morales. And that came from Into the Spider-Verse. I did not know much about Miles Morales before this movie came out. I was always, a Peter Parker kid growing up, plus Miles Morales. It's not that I wasn't interested, it's just I wasn't reading comics a lot when the time Miles Morales debuted in the comics. This film does such a damn good job at introducing who Miles is and allowing us as an audience to live in his world. What I love so much about this film is that the animation style and the craft behind it allow for this movie to tell a very detail-oriented story with a very vivid and living world for Miles Morales in Brooklyn. And I love seeing that in the opening act of this film when we're introduced to Miles after a great opening sequence with Peter Parker, who is basically talking about how he's given us 1,000 backstories of Spider-Man before, and he's like, alright, let's do it one more time. Such a good gag in this movie, and it runs throughout the film. It's so funny because Peter Parker just gives you this spiel on what he went through, and then we cut straight to Miles and we get his life in Brooklyn. You get his morning daily routine. He's going to school, he's talking to his dad, and that's when you get a nice establishment of his relationship between Miles and his father. His father thinks he can be greater. He really doesn't want Miles to be like his uncle, and we don't really know why that is. Movie, fills us in later. I really love this opening beat because it feels so nice and it feels so homey. You really love this family. Miles' family feels so lived in and so well established here. And sitting in a room and they're talking to each other, you feel like you're in the room with them. You're a part of this family, and I think it's really brilliantly done. Just seeing Miles live his daily life did a lot for this film, and it did a lot for me, who didn't know much about him before, and I was immediately endeared to this character before we even got to him being, on the quest to become Spider-Man. And then we get to the point where the stakes just suddenly draw higher, and I love the fact that Into the Spider-Verse, this movie begins with the death of a Spider-Man. After a couple of events happen, Peter Parker ends up dying in front of Miles Morales, and he witnesses this. Miles makes Peter a promise that he will, help him out in a certain moment. What I love about that is this is kind of the Uncle Ben moment, but Peter Parker, it's so poetic because Peter Parker is translating an Uncle Ben moment to Miles Morales. Well, it's not the Uncle Ben moment for Miles Morales, but it is the promise that he makes to be a hero, and it's, what he says later to the other Spider-Men when he's like, no, I need to do this, I need to go fight Fisk because I have a promise to make. That stuff it hits, and it's because he made that promise to Peter, and I like how all the other Spider-Men can relate to that because that's what makes them heroes. This movie is a celebration of what Spider-Man is as a hero. The spirit of Spider-Man just traverses every single shot and frame and storytelling beat of this movie. The movie understands that Peter Parker is a significant character. It understands that Spider-Man, this is the Spider-Man before Miles, and that we are passing a torch down. And I love the fact that this film respects Peter while also being able to pass the torch down to Miles and endears to that character. The only way to do that is to respect the death of Peter Parker when it happens, and I love that this film takes its time and really lets you sit with that emotion before we meet the new Peter Parker, Peter B. Parker, from the alternate universe. And I think a lot of those moments are work. Not only that, it also leads to my favorite Stan Lee cameo in any comic book movie, I'm going to be honest. Especially after his passing. This cameo just means so much to me. I love that it's Stan Lee telling Miles that the suit will always fit eventually. And I don't know, I don't feel like crying, so I'm not going to get too much into it. It's a great moment. Really, the first Spider-Verse, what's so great about it is that the pacing lends itself to telling so much story, but also you're engulfed in every single emotion of the characters. It has a perfect balance of that. Remember in my Mario review that I said sometimes there are moments where that movie has trouble breathing? Spider-Verse never really suffers with that. There's always a moment to breathe with the character, understand a beat, and really get to know someone. I love when Gwen and Miles meet, and you get to understand their dynamic from, first they start off kind of opposites, they're really awkward towards each other, other. And I love that it begins as a friendship. It feels really authentic in that way. And I love the interactions between her and Miles at school. It really adds to that, relatable, awkward teen dynamic that Spider-Man comes with. And I think it does it in a way that's not too cheesy. Comedy in these moments come across very character-based, and I think that really works. And it really does a good job in endearing us to the friendship between Miles and Gwen before we understand that Gwen is actually Spider-Gwen, another Spider-Man from a different reality, or Spider-Woman, sorry. Once Miles, Peter, and Gwen are all established as characters, they're the three main pivotal points of this movie, and their dynamics back and forth with each other as they interact, as they're trying to figure out what this is doing, is so well done. Dialogue is funny, the quips are hilarious. I love their back and forth chemistry between Peter and Miles. I need to see this downtrodden, hurt Peter, and to add to that, Spider-Verse does a great job at making layered characters, especially with Peter Parker too. This movie doesn't shy away from making other characters feel fully lived in, and it doesn't just focus on Miles, it focuses on everyone. Everyone is well-rounded in this, just like Peter B. Parker, who suffers from depression in this movie. He literally went through a divorce. Him and Mary Jane are not together anymore, and he's sad about it. He's also messed up on other things involving financial situations and just life in general. He's really down on his luck, and I appreciate this movie. An animated movie for kids and families shows that even your hero can fall to these moments. They're human. And at the end of the day, it is important to highlight the human element of Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And this movie does a great job at excelling at both of those angles. I appreciate this movie has empathy for all of its characters, not only Miles, you see his relationship with Prowler and how that, really empathizes us with him and his family problems, but also you see Peter Parker's issues, you also see Gwen's and what motivated her to become Spider-Man. That universe, instead of Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, he dies and Gwen becomes Spider-Woman. And that really affects her, and that's her Uncle Ben moment of relatability for us, the audience, and for the other Spider people. Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, he gets empathy in this movie. You understand his motivation. He's not doing it well. He's not being a good person about it. Of course not. But he's just a dude suffering from loss. And I appreciate this movie didn't have to even do that for Fisk. You could have just made him a brute. But this movie took that extra mile and it made him a character. It made him someone who you could at least relate to, sort of. So when you understand, oh, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to bring Vanessa and his son back. Just found him in a moment committing a crime, doing something bad, fighting Spider-Man, and they crash trying to get away from him. I bet you that haunts him every single day, and I like the fact that this movie highlights that. It does it in a way where it doesn't detract from his villainy. I will say my biggest flaw with Spider-Verse is actually just a small character design nitpick. I don't like how Kingpin is designed, and not even from a meme standpoint, it's funny because it's a meme. I genuinely just, the Kingpin design takes me out of the movie because it's kind of silly looking compared to the emotional weight of what's going on in the story, especially in the final confrontation. Now, it doesn't take me out of the movie. It's just, if I had to pick an issue, that would be it. I'm not a fan of the Kingpin design, and I feel like he could have looked a little more human and smaller, like the other characters. But it's just a me thing. It didn't ruin the movie for me. It's just my nitpick with it, honestly. I know I'm all over the place with this one. I'm kind of just gushing about it at this point. But that third act, that moment in the third act, there's 3 key moments where I cry in this movie. Peter's trying to go fight Kingpin with Miles, and Miles stops him and knocks him off the cliff, catches him, and he's holding him there, and he's like, you gotta go home, man. And Peter's just afraid to go back. He's afraid to go back and deal with the consequences of his own actions, what he neglected in his relationship. That stuff gets me, and that is Spider-Man to a T. When he's just, not bad, kid. That gets me. It's such a nice moment because I think dealing with problems from your past is just as important as, solving things from the present. And I love the fact that we got to see Peter Parker, deal with that. Anyway, this movie really relishes in, See what I mean? It's emotional. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is about legacy. It's about loss. It's about tragedy. It's about emotion. It's about connection. It's about heroism and how that all entails together to the elements you need to be a hero, to be better as yourself. And I love that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse explores that, and it does it perfectly, in my opinion. It does it with style. It does it with craft, creativity. This is one of the greatest animated movies I have ever seen. It's one of the best comic book movies ever made, and it's one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. I can talk all day about Into the Spider-Verse. I love it as an origin tale. I love it as a character piece, and I think across the Spider-Verse, I don't know if it can top the first one. I genuinely love this movie, and it's only gotten better and better and better over time. I love this film. Watch Into the Spider-Verse if you haven't. You've probably seen it. I mean, you're watching a spoiler video about it. Thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate you guys. That was my Scatterbrain review, or really just gush session about Spider-Verse. Can't wait for the sequel. I'm seeing it tonight. I'm so excited. It's going to be so good. I'm ready. Here's the Spider-Man. Just thank you guys. Go see Across the Spider-Verse. We already know it's going to be good.